Saint Dominic was born in Caleruega, halfway between Osma and Aranda de Duero in Old Castile, Spain. He was named after Saint Dominic of Silos. The Benedictine Abbey of Santo Domingo de Silos lies a few miles north of Caleruega. In the earliest narrative source, by Jordan of Saxony, Dominic's parents are not named. The story is told that before his birth his barren mother made a pilgrimage to the abbey at Silos, and dreamt that a dog leapt from her womb carrying a flaming torch in its mouth, and seemed to set the earth on fire. This story is likely to have emerged when his order became known, after his name, as the Dominican Order, Dominicanus in Latin, and a play on words interpreted as Dominicanus, dog of the Lord. Jordan adds that Dominic was brought up by his parents and a maternal uncle who was an archbishop. The failure to name his parents is not unusual, since Jordan wrote a history of the order's early years, rather than a biography of Dominic. A later source of the 13th century gives the names as ɡuθઃman and Felix. Nearly a century after Dominic's birth, a local author asserted that Dominic's father was ver venerabilis a dives in populo suo, an honored and wealthy man in his village. The travel narrative of Pero Taffa, written circa 1439, about a pilgrimage to Dominic's tomb in Italy, states that Dominic's father belonged to the family de Guzmán, and that his mother belonged to the Acca or Azza family. Dominic's mother, Joan of Azza, was beatified by Pope Leo XII in 1829. At 14 years of age, Dominic was sent to the Premonstratensian monastery of Santa Maria de la Vid and subsequently transferred for further studies in the schools of Palencia. In Palencia, he devoted 6 years to the arts and 4 to theology. At some point in time he also joined Santa Maria de la Vid. In 1191, when Spain was desolated by famine, young Dominic gave away his money and sold his clothes, furniture, and even precious manuscripts to feed the hungry. Dominic reportedly told his astonished fellow students, "Would you have me study off these dead skins when men are dying of hunger?" At the age of 24, Dominic was ordained as a priest and subsequently joined the canonry of the Cathedral of Osma. In 1198, Don Martin de Bazan, the Bishop of Osma, having reformed the chapter, made Dominic the subprior of the chapter. Diego de Raspo succeeded Bazan as Bishop of Osma in 1201. In 1203 or 1204 he accompanied Diego de Raspo on a diplomatic mission for Alfonso VIII, King of Castile, to secure a bride in Denmark for Crown Prince Ferdinand. The envoys traveled to Denmark via Aragon and the south of France. The marriage negotiations ended successfully, but the princess died before leaving for Castile. During their return journey, they met with Cistercian monks who had been sent by Pope Innocent III to preach against the Cathars, a Christian religious sect with Gnostic and dualistic beliefs which the Catholic Church deemed heretical. Dominic and Diego de Raspo attributed the Cistercians' lack of success to their extravagance and pomp compared to the asceticism of the Cathars. They decided to adopt a more ascetic way of life and began a program in the south of France to convert the Cathars. In late 1206, Raspo and his group established themselves at the monastery of Our Lady of Peril in France. Bishop Foulques of Toulouse allowed them to use the church. The house was intended partly as a refuge for women who had previously lived in Cathar religious houses, and partly the first established base of operations. The first nuns of Peril lived for several months at Fanjeaux, because the buildings at Peril were not yet habitable. Dominic gave them the rule of St. Augustine. Catholic Cathar debates were held at Verfail, Pamiers and Montreal. Ordered by the Pope to return to his diocese, Diego de Raspo died at Osma in December 1207, leaving Dominic alone in his mission. According to Dominican tradition, in 1208 Dominic experienced a vision of the Blessed Virgin Mary in the church at Peril, during which she gave him a rosary. This gave rise to the title Our Lady of the Rosary. The story of Dominic's vision was fabricated by Alanus de Rupi and it was based on the imaginary testimony of writers that never existed. The Bollandists concluded that the account originated with Alanus, 200 years after Dominic's death. The spread of the rosary is attributed to the preaching of the Dominicans. For centuries the rosary has been at the heart of the Dominican order. Pope Pius XI stated that the rosary is the principle and foundation on which the order of Saint Dominic rests for perfecting the lives of its members and obtaining the salvation of others. In 1215, Dominic established himself, with 6 followers, in a house given by Peter Sila, a rich resident of Toulouse. Dominic saw the need for a new type of organization to address the spiritual needs of the growing cities of the era, one that would combine dedication and systematic education, with more organizational flexibility than either monastic orders or the secular clergy. He subjected himself and his companions to the monastic rules of prayer and penance. Bishop Foulques gave them written authority to preach throughout the territory of Toulouse. Also in 1215, the year of the Fourth Lateran Council, Dominic and Foulques went to Rome to secure the approval of Pope Innocent III. Dominic returned to Rome a year later and was finally granted written authority in December 1216 by the new Pope, Honorius III, for him to form the Ordo Praedicatorum, Order of Preachers. In the winter of 1216 to 1217, at the house of Ugolino de Conti, Dominic first met William of Montferrat, who joined Dominic as a friar in the order of preachers and remained a close friend. Cecilia Cesarini, who was received by Dominic into his new order, in her old age described him as thin and of middle height. His face was handsome and somewhat fair. He had reddish hair and beard and beautiful eyes. His hands were long and fine and his voice pleasingly resonant. He never got bald, though he wore the full tonsure, which was mingled with a few grey hairs. Although he traveled extensively to maintain contact with his growing brotherhood of friars, Dominic made his headquarters in Rome. In 1219, Pope Honorius III invited Dominic and his companions to take up residence at the ancient Roman Basilica of Santa Sabina, which they did by early 1220. Before that time the friars had only a temporary residence in Rome at the convent of San Sisto Vecchio, which Honorius III had given to Dominic circa 1218, intending it to become a convent for a reformation of nuns at Rome under Dominic's guidance. The official foundation of the Dominican convent at Santa Sabina with its studium conventual, the first Dominican studium in Rome, occurred with the legal transfer of property from Pope Honorius III to the Order of Preachers on the 5th of June 1222, though the brethren had taken up residence there already in 1220. The studium at Santa Sabina was the forerunner of the Studium Generale at Santa Maria sopra Minerva. The latter would be transformed in the 16th century into the College of St. Thomas, Latin, Collegium Divi Thomae, and then in the 20th century into the Pontifical University of St. Thomas Aquinas, Angelicum sited at the convent of Saints Dominic and Sixtus. Dominic arrived in Bologna on the 21st of December 1218. A convent was established at the Mascarella Church by Reginald of Orleans. Soon afterward they had to move to the church of San Nicolo of the Vineyards. Dominic settled in this church and held here the first two general chapters of the order. Guiraud 1913, pp. 126, 140. According to Guiraud, Dominic abstained from meat, observed stated fasts and periods of silence, selected the worst accommodations and the meanest clothes, and never allowed himself the luxury of a bed. When traveling, he beguiled the journey with spiritual instruction and prayers. Guiraud also states that Dominic frequently traveled barefoot and that rain and other discomforts elicited from his lips nothing but praises to God. Dominic died at the age of 51, according to Guiraud, exhausted with the austerities and labors of his career. He had reached the convent of St. Nicholas at Bologna, Italy, weary and sick with a fever. Guiraud states that Dominic made the monks lay him on some sacking stretched upon the ground, and that the brief time that remained to him was spent in exhorting his followers to have charity, to guard their humility, and to make their treasure out of poverty. He died at noon on the 6th of August 1221. His body was moved to a simple sarcophagus in 1233. Under the authority of Pope Gregory IX, Dominic was canonized in 1234. In 1267 Dominic's remains were moved to the shrine, made by Nicola Pisano in his workshop for the Church of St. Dominic in Bologna.